Hello everyone and welcome to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the weekly show where we keep all of you up to date as to everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. And thank you all for joining us for this very special episode. Special for a few reasons, but let's talk about the first reason special. First of all, we got the whole gang here today, which is very exciting. We've got everyone, yeah, woo! In case you forgot who we all are, well, I'm your host, Nick Serpa, and we've also got the wonderful Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello, hello.
We've got the very talented Luiz Estrella over in the other corner.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got the rock solid Nicolas Chadet.
Hey, everyone.
I don't know where I get these adjectives from. They're just,
Amazing.
Sometimes they make sense, sometimes they don't. Yep. So that's the first reason it's special. We got everyone here. And the second reason it's special is because this is our big end of the year holiday special episode. And we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This is going to be a bit of a longer episode. We are going to quickly go through some of the news that came out this week because there is some notable stuff. But after that, we are going to have our first annual, hopefully this will be an ongoing thing, our first annual end of the year awards, which I'm petitioning that we call the Refreshies. Is anyone going to veto that?
Great idea. No.
Okay.
I'm all for the Refreshies.
We're rolling with it, yes. The first annual Refreshies Awards, where we talk about our favorite Switch games of the year, just the interesting stuff that we played, maybe our most surprising games that we played, all kinds of fun stuff. So it's going to be our big end of the year extravaganza. We are going to be taking about a 2-week break after this episode to let folks go and enjoy the holidays with family and friends. But we will be back in January, and hopefully we will have another Nintendo Direct somewhere around that time. Hopefully not in the 2 weeks that we're gone. Doesn't seem very likely, but stranger things have happened. Yeah. All right, well, let's just get into it. Let's start with our news block. Here's a big news thing that just dropped last night as of the time of this recording. Dropped on a Saturday night for some weird reason. It's pretty big. So I kind of suspected this might happen, but now it's confirmed that the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, which are remasters of the first 6 Final Fantasy games, 1 through 6, they are all launching on Switch. They're coming in spring 2023. They're coming either separately, digitally, or together in a bundle. And there's even going to be a physical collector's edition that you can buy through the Square Enix store. So that's really cool. I did not expect to get this random news drop that we're getting 6 Final Fantasy games brought over to the Switch.
It took a while, though, because these Pixel remasters, I think, came out on PC and mobile probably the better part of 2 years ago, right? Or at least a year and a half ago. So I feel like this is long overdue, especially with, I just feel like it's a perfect fit, especially for something like Switch. So...
Yeah, it really feels strange that they didn't announce it coming to Switch at the outset. And I feel like they staggered the release of some of them. I feel like they released the first 3 and then they released the second 3 later on. So maybe that's why, but they wanted to wait till everything was out. But yeah, I mean, here's what's crazy about this. The Switch is basically going to be, at this point, maybe the best place to play Final Fantasy games. You'll be able to play almost every mainline Final Fantasy game, 1 through 10. You can play 12. The only ones you can't play that are out there now are 14 and 15 in terms of the mainline franchise games, which is crazy. And even 15, they have that weird, what's it called? It was that mobile version of Final Fantasy 15. So technically you can play that one on Switch as well. Yeah, there's a lot of RPGs. Nicolas, do you have the mental bandwidth to play 6 Final Fantasy games right now?
I don't know if that would be the problem, more so that I have the desire to play them. My issue is that I do want to kind of play, the first 6 Final Fantasies. I've never actually played any of them except for the first one, and that one only partially. But I don't know. Some of this is still bugging me a little. I'm not a huge fan of how they're pricing this, for one. You look at the physical edition online, and it's $75. I mean, I know it's 6 games, but it's still quite a lot. And then you add because it's exclusive to the Square Enix store, it's like another $24 shipping, and that's the only way you can get it physically. So that's just a lot. And I think even outside of that, the main complaint I'm seeing about the remasters is that they still have the font they used for the iOS versions, which is just not ideal. It's not like a terrible font that ruins the entire game, but it doesn't look great either. And that just kind of makes me want to play it on like Steam with a mod instead.
Are people really that upset about a font? I mean, this just seems kind of. I mean, on one hand, it's surprising to me,
but like,
I mean, it's a part of the game that you see a lot.
yeah,
this is
just
true.
the way that it scales with the game is with the UI is my understanding, where it will just like shrink the font a ton if it's longer names and longer spells and stuff. And it just doesn't. It kind of clashes with the rest of it, but I mean, regardless, it is nice that these are here. That much you can't really deny.
Yeah, it is a lot to ask for what are at this point very old games. I mean, I know not everyone likes like the new sprite work, but I think it looks pretty nice. And these aren't really games that I'm like really like eager to go out and play at this point. Like I'm more interested in some of the newer Final Fantasies, but it's nice that they're here. Like the fact that you can play almost every mainline Final Fantasy game on the Switch is pretty cool in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so those are coming in spring 2023. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit newer, we mentioned in a previous episode that it looked like some new games in the Ys franchise are coming to Switch. And now we finally know what that looks like. Now, they're only confirmed for Japan at this point. But typically, I mean, all the mainline Ys games have come over at some point. So the first thing that RPG fans can look forward to is there is it's basically an HD remaster of Ys 3. So Ys 3 already got like a remaster at one point called Ys the Oath in Felghana, but that came out a while ago. So this is a remaster of a remaster, basically. And but it is noteworthy because this game isn't on the Switch, and there are a lot of the older Ys games on Switch. We've gotten some of the newer ones, but outside of I think like Ys Origin, they haven't brought over most of the other ones. So kind of cool to see this come over. I don't know a ton about the Ys games, honestly, other than like they do have like an ongoing story. Like they don't really do the Final Fantasy thing where the games are all kind of separate. It's more of like an ongoing story, although you can play them separately, is my understanding.
That's interesting.
It seems like they have the same protagonist across, I presume, all 10 of the mainline entries, which is wild to me.
Yes, Adol. Yes, he's been around a long time.
It's the one with the red hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. He's been all over the world, man. He was stranded on an island in Ys 8, and then Ys 9, he was in this weird, like, gothic city. I haven't played any of these games, but that's what I know about them.
Now he's going to be on a boat.
Yes, now he's going to be on a boat in Ys 10 Nordics, which it looks, kind of piratey. Which is cool. We don't know a lot about it. We got a couple screenshots. It looks really good. It's only coming to Switch at this point, is my understanding. They've only announced it for Switch, which in that case, I mean, the screenshots they're showing off look pretty great. I really like the art style of this game. I like what they seem to be doing with the theming. I want to see more of it for sure.
I like that the Ys series, it is a JRPG, but it is really focused on the action. So I think that's kind of we have a lot of games like with turn-based combat, or like Xenoblade, which is a mix of turn-based and action. And I'm just really curious to play Ys for the first time for the combat, to see how it actually works. I never got to play the series. I always wanted to play Ys 8 on the Switch, but never actually got to buy it. But yeah, it's a series that I'm interested in getting into.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the game is like once it comes out. Although we will have to wait for localization for it. Oh, by the way, the game Ys 10 is also on PS5 and PS4, but Ys Memoir is exclusive on Switch.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Oh, minor correction there. But yeah, no, it's more RPGs to add to the pile. Gosh, I remember when the Switch was having like an RPG drought. Like when it first came out, everyone was like, "Oh, we need more RPGs on this thing," And now the prophecy has been fulfilled, and there are all the RPGs on this thing, pretty much.
Please slow down.
An
Don't
oversaturation.
have that much time.
No,
We don't have time to play all these.
no, most people do not, and that's okay. But also, it's sad because I want to play everything. All right, well, if you're looking for a break from something to play, here is some news I don't think a lot of folks were expecting this week. So we've gotten countless Pokemon animes over the years, and it was only a matter of time before we got another one. And the Pokemon Company recently announced that they are starting up a new series. It's called Pokemon Ultimate Journeys, the series. And it's, focusing on, obviously, the new Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet. And this one marks the end. This is the real noteworthy thing. It's kind of the end of Ash's adventures. Ash, who has been the protagonist of Pokemon anime for, gosh, a really long time. I think it was over
20 plus years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 25 seasons. So it's pretty crazy. And it's been voiced by the same person that whole time.
I think there was a different voice actor for the very start of the show, but most of it has been the same actors.
Gotcha.
He's really only had 2 basically, but yeah, I mean the first one was there for a couple of years, but yeah, the last, I want to say 17-ish years has been the same actress. Yeah.
That sounds right. Man, can you
Gotcha.
imagine being able to retire at 10 years old? What a dream.
That's true.
That's crazy, actually.
He's gonna go all the way back to Pallet Town and be like, well, Ma, I got that 401k and everything. Let's just relax. And you want to go to Hawaii?
Yeah.
Let's go to Hawaii.
Yeah, what a concept.
I'm sorry, Alola.
These actors who start their careers as kids, I always wonder how exactly that worked out for them. I mean, you have to imagine a lot of it would happen without the parents really pushing for their kids to get into it in the first place. But
You think Pokemon trainers you think they pay taxes? Do you think they have to do taxes? If it's a profession, do you think tax season comes around and they got?
I mean, how else do you get
Yeah,
free
that's a good
healing
question.
at the Pokemon centers? It's gotta be taxed.
that's a good point. Yeah, someone's got to pay for that.
Either that or it's Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah, but clearly they've been slacking off on I mean, they really don't do a good job trimming all the long grass in between towns and stuff. I mean, clearly tax dollars need to be better utilized in the Pokemon world. So yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with the Pokemon anime. Believe it or not, the way that I've kind of dabbled in it a little bit is through the I think the often forgotten Pokemon TV app on the Switch, which just throws up a bunch of random old episodes for free. So if this ever comes to that, maybe I'll check it out.
No, I'm just going to say it's curious. I grew up watching the Pokemon anime series, and those first seasons, I remember being one of my favorite things to watch on the TV. Of course, after growing up and rewatching some of those episodes, I don't think it's a really great anime. It's really made for kids and all of that. But it was always nice to see the journey that Ash has been through and all the different Pokemons that he got in every season. I've been watching some episodes from here and there of different seasons, and he didn't change a lot. Ash was a really static character, I should say, I think. So it was something it was kind of hard to keep up with the series because usually things wouldn't change a lot. So I kind of see them trying to change things here with a reboot or something like that as a good thing for the series. And even if it is mostly for kids, it still is mostly for kids. I think I'll try to see what they're going to do with this new series to see how they change things now that the main protagonist is not here anymore.
Right.
Characters
That'll
are going to
be
be
interesting.
11 years old.
What? 1 year later, that's gonna be the first thing you see when the new show starts. 1 year later.
Yeah, I mean, you can't let characters develop too quickly because otherwise, how are you going to keep your show running for 25 seasons? I mean, the math just doesn't
true, yeah.
check out.
I would laugh though if basically the last 26 years have really just been the span of like a few weeks in like real Pokemon. That's all of that.
It is really funny.
There's this theory that Ash is in a coma. I don't know if you guys have
Heard that.
ever heard about
I've
that.
heard that.
Maybe he'll wake up soon.
That'll be the very final episode.
Yeah.
Wakes up in a post-apocalypse, and that's what the new series takes
Oh
place
god.
in.
That would be interesting,
It's a
actually.
Resident Evil
dark turn,
crossover.
yeah.
All right. Well, we know it's coming sometime next year, so we'll keep you guys posted as we learn more. Now, before we get into our awards, I do want to touch on some updates that we've gotten in terms of games coming out, and as well as some in-game updates. So first of all, we finally got a release date for Hogwarts Legacy on the Switch, which I still don't know how this game is happening on the Switch.
Yeah.
But, so the PS5 and Xbox Series X versions are coming out in February, which I'm very excited for. And then if you have a PS4 or Xbox One, those versions are coming out a little bit later in April. And then if you have a Switch, you got to wait all the way until July, unfortunately. Which, I mean, I will say, it gives me a little bit more hope knowing that they're taking the time to really optimize this game for the Switch, I hope. Because with the last gameplay showcase that they had this past week, they were showing off the open world and broom flight, and it all just looked stunning and really smooth. And I'm like, if they get this running on Switch, it is going to be a miracle.
Yeah, we really need more footage.
Yeah. I mean, usually the Switch version is handled by a different company, right? Usually they hire a company that is specialized in those Switch ports, like Panic Button or something like that. So I'm hoping that they are taking these extra times to make sure that the version looks fine. I think my biggest, like, for me, the biggest example that we can take here is The Witcher 3, right? That's a game that it is crazy to see it running on Switch, and it's not perfect, but it runs good enough to play the game with no issues. So I'm hoping that the game has a similar performance to The Witcher 3. I think that to The Witcher 3, I think that's the benchmark that I'm trying to see it here. But I also watched the gameplay showing the broom, and man, that will be a difficult port for sure. I'm going to play the game on my Xbox, but I'm curious to see how it will run on Switch.
I almost expect it to be like a GBA or DS situation where the Switch version is just like a 2D sprite-based platformer.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
They did that a lot with the Harry Potter games in the past with EA.
Yeah.
You know,
It'll be
honestly,
developed by
I'd
WayForward.
probably play it. Yes, if WayForward developed the Switch ports for Hogwarts Legacy, I would probably play it.
I mean, I'm for it.
A side scroller, could you imagine? Yeah.
Right? Metroidvania. Pottervania.
Could be good.
Could be good. So at least we know when that one is coming. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of folks will want to see some gameplay before they pre-order something like that.
Yeah, I was watching like the gameplay showcase you were talking about. We like my girlfriend and I watched that just a couple days ago actually. 'Cause she's super stoked for it also, and like my immediate reaction was when because you were saying like they went out to the open world and they were really showing all the stuff you could do out there and all the seasons and whatnot, and like man, the density of like the open world just in terms of like foliage and stuff like that, and like it's insane. Like you're gonna tell there's gonna be 3 trees on Switch, and the rest are going to be popping in like crazy. It's going to look like Legends Arceus, I promise you. That's what it's going to look like.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping that with this extra time, it will pay off. Because it would be cool to have a portable version of this game, but that's also what the Steam Deck is for. So, sorry, I had to say it. Okay. Let's talk about some other games that are coming pretty soon to Switch. Specifically to Switch Online, we just got word that, actually they're already out now. So if you have Switch Online, you can go play these games now. Not necessarily the most exciting update. These are exclusively Genesis games this time around, so only for the expansion pack members. If you've been holding off on subscribing until you could play Columns on your Switch, well, then this is going to be a very exciting update for you.
Rose fans, rise up.
Yes. Yeah, so you've got Columns, which is, just a basic kind of block matching game. Obviously very influential for the time, not so much nowadays. Alien Storm, which is a pretty well acclaimed, I guess for lack of a better word, beat 'em up style brawler game with some sci-fi trappings. Golden Axe 2, I'm sure a lot of folks have heard of Golden Axe. This is a sequel to the original game. And Virtua Fighter 2. So a decent selection, I would say, but not much for, folks looking to play Nintendo games on their Nintendo console.
Yeah, I don't know how much broad appeal these have, but I'm sure for like dedicated Genesis fans, some of these are probably pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm surprised to see Sega bringing so many games to this service, considering that they always do something like a Genesis collection or stuff like that. So I was thinking that maybe they would not be so straightforward with these games, releasing a lot of the stuff from their back catalog, but sometimes it feels as if they are releasing more games than Nintendo on their own subscription. So yeah, I think a lot of Sega hardcore fans will recognize some of these games, and it's always nice to have some of them to give them a try.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm glad they exist. I'm sure people are excited for them, but yeah, no, and it is kind of funny because when they originally announced the Genesis expansion pack, I was like, is this gonna be the kind of thing where they just drop these games once and that's gonna be it? But yeah, no, they've been more consistent than Nintendo at this point. I don't know, it hasn't been that long since we got the last batch of N64 games. Those being, I think, Mario Party 1 and 2. But surprisingly, they didn't include Mario Party 3, even though, it's coming. So now we just have this weird gap between when the next of the Mario Party trilogy is coming. But yeah, so that's that update. Again, hopefully some folks out there are excited for it. Now, let's talk about some Switch games that folks may already own getting some updates. So Splatoon 3 obviously just got its big chill winter update, and we just learned that there's another Splatfest coming. So that's exciting. January 6th to January 8th, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific time here in the US. And this one is centered around, I don't really know, we wrote it in our article as various taste sensations. So
I mean, that's what they advertised it as.
It's a weird way to put it, but I guess it makes sense. Yeah. Spicy, sweet, or sour. Those are your options.
It's a Splatfest. It's always nice. I mean, I'm a little sad it's not happening a little earlier and that it isn't like Christmas or New Year's themed, because they have done that before. But it's a Splatfest, so that's nice. Those are always fun events.
You know what to expect at this point. Nicolas, I guess since we're talking about Splatoon, have you jumped in at all since the last big chill season update? Has there been anything noteworthy in there for you?
I mean, to be completely honest, I've been playing Splatoon almost every day since it released. So, yeah, no, I've been enjoying the game.
Yeah, no, I figured. I mean, we all know you love Splatoon, but in terms of the chill season, since you've been playing it every day, does anything really stand out about it? You're like, gosh, I'm so glad they added this.
I think it's just fun to have periodic content updates. The new weapons are nice because there's a lot of them. They had 13 new ones, which is quite a bit, and most of them are, not to say that some of them aren't usable, but a lot of them are good enough that you see them pretty frequently when playing, so you get to experience a lot of new different matchups and weapons. And all the new clothing is always nice, and I don't know, I feel like overall it's been handled well. There's been some balance adjustments, so what you're seeing in online play is a little different. I've been enjoying it.
It's good that it hasn't turned you away from your daily play session. Now, if you've been hoping for similar treatment for Mario Strikers Battle League, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you again, but we did get a third free update for this game that has been announced. So we now know that Bowser Jr. and Birdo are joining as the next characters. and they're actually already in the game. They launched earlier this week, so yeah, you can now play as 2 more characters. I don't think anything else has changed though.
Interestingly, I think Nintendo of Europe also said this was the final update for the game. Apparently, Nintendo of America didn't mention that, so I don't know what's going on there, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is it really that shocking that the support for this is ending that fast?
I mean, support ended before it even came out, man. I mean, that's why we got the product we did. I mean,
Yeah, I guess it is worth mentioning. They did also add, they're adding a new stage called Urban Rooftop. So there is another stage coming, and there's a little bit of extra gear. But yeah, overall, I don't think it's... The game should have launched with more content, and, you know, I feel like we're finally approaching, like, the minimum of where this game should have been at launch, basically.
I mean, even then, like, this content is... the characters are neat, and I'm sure they have some differences, but, like, the stage is just aesthetics. There's nothing functionally different about it, because all the stages in this game are the same. And the gear... I mean, like, the characters in gear are different from, like, a gameplay standpoint because of the stats, but they don't feel... You don't advertise, like, someone to come back to a game by showing them a bunch of numbers. That's kind of what this is, in that sense.
Right.
It's I think the issue is more not only the game has little contents, but I think the game itself, because Nintendo released the demo, right? And I played the demo, thank God, so I won't buy the game. I think the issues are on the roots of the experience. We can talk more about that later in our awards and stuff like that, but yeah.
Yeah, so I hope that there are some folks out there who are really enjoying this game. I mean, I always hope that, like, these games land with someone, but yeah, for me, you know, not really the type of content updates that are gonna get me to be excited about this game. All right, one more final thing that I just want to touch on real quick. And this actually is great because it kind of ties into our next big segment. Earlier this past week, Nintendo released a kind of year in review tool. So if you have a Nintendo online account, you can actually log into this Nintendo Switch year in review portal, and it will show you your most played games and what you played every month, and just everything you touched over the year. So yeah, it was actually very helpful for me when I was kind of thinking, like, what did I play this year? Like, it's easy to lose track sometimes when you play as many games as I'm sure we all do.
Yeah, it's very nice to have. I did hear that apparently last year's little thing like this was a little bit more detailed and had, like, some graphs and images, but I'm not too familiar with that.
Pour one out for the 3DS activity log while we're at it. It's the most in-depth data you could ever want to know about your games.
Yeah.
I miss that stuff, man. Like, that stuff always fascinated me. Wii U had a similar thing, too. Yeah.
So, this is fun.
Yeah, it's just a fun little thing we wanted to shout out. And just real quickly, in terms of game releases this past week, things are slowing down a little bit as we get into the holiday season. But I do want to shout out a few things. Definitely the big game that came out that I personally have been playing a lot of and will definitely be talking about later on in the show, hopefully if we have time, is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, the remaster bordering on a remake, in my opinion, of the PSP former exclusive Final Fantasy VII prequel. And it's a great game. My review should be posted in the next day or two. So yeah, I really recommend this one. It's an excellent port on the Switch. It runs great, it plays great, it feels very well suited for a handheld because of the way it structures its missions and everything. And it's just a good prequel as well. So yeah, that's definitely one I want to highlight. And then over in the indie world, we've got River City Girls 2, which, Dennis, you and I talked a little bit about that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it looks great. I know we actually got the opportunity to review it, but unfortunately I wasn't able to take it on. But yeah, no, the game looks fantastic. It definitely looks bigger and better than the first one. You can tell that the production value has definitely gone up. I think the success of the first River City Girls, definitely, I don't want to say was unexpected, but was definitely appreciated. And, it goes to show that there's still very much a market for those sort of arcade brawlers. And I feel like we've been seeing so much within the last couple of years, almost like there's been a resurgence, and I'm all for it, man. Like between this, Streets of Rage 4, there's like those new like
The TMNT games.
the teenage that like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Like all the collections, the Cowabunga stuff, and Shredder's Revenge, all that. And
Right.
like, it's just stuff is all over the place, and even the regular like River City stuff, like you're seeing ports of that and remasters, and I saw something on Steam literally just last night that was River City related. But yeah, I mean, like it's awesome seeing this stuff come back, and then that's not to mention all the cool indie stuff too. So anywhere stuff
yeah.
usually between $5 and $15 that you see on the eShop all the time and Steam all the time. That's and they just get so creative. It's such a simple concept of like, all right, press beat a punch, and then like A to jump, whatever. But like, man, it can get so fun, especially with I think the big thing is having incredible environments, because that is the most exciting part of a brawler to me. Because I mean, the fighting part obviously is fun and it's very stress relieving, but it's cool having these awesome environments to fight in, and just while you're fighting, having I don't know, like just like battleships in the background, and then just planes fly over, and like let's just say they'll drop a bomb. Like I have so many fond memories of side-scrolling brawlers growing up, that were X-Men and things like that. So yeah, and those are some of my fondest memories, especially stuff at the arcade too. Stuff like
Totally.
like Final Fight also. Like, oh man, so good. So
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see the genre getting resurgence. Obviously, these games feel right at home on the Switch. And yeah, Way Forward makes great games.
They do.
They have pretty much mastered the feel of these types of games in a lot of folks' opinions. So yeah, great to see this one finally out after a pretty long wait. Folks are excited for it. And then just one other just indie game I want to shout out just because it's interesting. So this game is called Cardboard Kings, and essentially it is a store management sim where you are running like a like trading card store. Like you are running a shop that's all around selling different types of trading cards, which is such like a weird like idea, but it's interesting for sure. Yeah. I've never seen anything quite like this before. The art style is not necessarily my jam, but like I'm very interested in the concept.
yeah, there's been a lot of interesting like simulator games coming out lately. I think one of the more funny ones and surprising ones really to come out this year was definitely Power Wash Simulator. That one was definitely like just took a lot of people by surprise, mainly because of not just how good it was, but like how it was sort of like addicting, man. Just cleaning everything.
Super
Like,
satisfying.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. But just all these simulators that put you in situations that you wouldn't even expect, and Cardboard Kings definitely continues the trend of that, But you're right, the art style isn't really for me, but that concept though, especially as someone who loves trading cards, is it's definitely fascinating for sure.
Yeah, we're quickly approaching the point where there's going to be a simulation or management style game for pretty much anything you can imagine. So, yeah, it makes sense that something like this was going to come along at some point. All right, well, that's our news block for the week. I know we kind of sped through that a little bit, but we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for, as I previously announced, the first annual Nintendo Everything Refreshies Award.
Yay! I feel like we should have had some like epic music here just to sort of transition into.
I'll put the Dragon Quest soundtrack for Nick.
Okay.
Oh, thank you,
Full
Luiz.
blast.
Really
That was
epic
so
stuff.
Yeah, and just loop it throughout the rest of the show. That's
Yeah,
it.
I'll take a 10-hour clip of the Overture 10 and I'll...
Luiz, we're trying to get more listeners to our show, not scare them all away. Traumatize them. Jeez, Luiz.
Oh god.
All right. Well, let me just kind of quickly run through how this is going to work. So we have a bunch of different categories, and most of them we're just going to kind of go around. And I was going to start with our favorite Switch games of the year, where we all kind of picked our top 3 games. But I think I'm actually going to move that towards the end of the show, 'cause I feel like it's a good way to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah.
So why don't we start off with our most surprising game of the year? So this is a game that we picked up and we played, and you don't necessarily know what you're going to get into, but you end up leaving pleasantly surprised, or maybe in some cases really surprised with the game, and ended up being something that you really enjoyed when maybe you weren't so sure about it. I know there were a lot of games like this that came out this year, so let's start with Nicolas. Nicolas, what was the most surprising game that you played this year?
So my choice is probably a little bit boring, but I think it still applies. I would say my most surprising game I played was Kirby and the Forgotten Land, solely because I already knew it was going to be, it's a fun, good Kirby game, but it was so good. It really surprised me with just how well HAL just nailed the transition into 3D. And not only that, but also just made a really good game. Like, even ignoring the fact that, it's now a 3D game and everything comes along with that, it's just a really well-made Kirby game with fun characters, fun story, lots of collectibles. Just great.
Yeah, I mean, the buzz I heard around this game was that, we're now at the point where, 3D Kirby games are approaching the quality of, a 3D Mario game, which is insane.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was expecting that.
Yeah.
It's well deserved though, because I mean Kirby's always been a consistently great series. So, and the fact that Kirby, especially for being around almost as long too, maybe obviously not as long, but almost. And but Kirby's always kind of been, at least up until maybe about 10 years ago, it seems like Kirby's always been definitely more of like a B-list, even some would argue even C-list character, honestly, throughout all the Nintendo characters, honestly. But he's definitely like an A-lister now, for sure. For sure. And Kirby and the Forgotten Land proved that tenfold, man. Because that game was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, showed that he was capable of reaching higher heights, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah,
exactly. I think the series was a little bit stagnated with the 2D games because all of them look, even though they were great, all of them looked very similar. And I think Star Allies was the point where they realized that maybe we should try something a little bit different, and the final result was amazing.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it paid off sales-wise and just in terms of overall quality. Mm-hmm. Dennis, what about you? What was the most surprising game that you played here in 2022?
Yeah, so I mean, it was hard just to because there were definitely a couple of surprises, ones that I weren't expecting, but I think the two, it's hard to name just one. There's definitely more, but the two that I would say are on equal parts for me is one of them being Tinykin, and then the other one being As Dusk Falls. Tinykin because I didn't expect myself to enjoy it as much as I did. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that looks like a cool little platformer with some Pikmin elements to it. But then, I started playing it, and man, let me tell you something. I could not put it down, and next thing you know, I was aiming for, the platinum, right? Or getting all the achievements or whatever, and that's exactly what I did. So I 100%ed it. It was so good. The level design was absolutely phenomenal, and the way everything seamlessly weaved into each other between all the collectibles and the small little story that it had, and the humor. My God, man, the humor was so good in this game. And the art direction, I mean, Tinykin just sort of, for me, came out of nowhere and really surprised me. And I couldn't put it down. That was my game for a couple of days. And it didn't overstay its welcome either. It was a solid maybe 6-7 hours. Not too long,
not too bad
short.
at all.
Short.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just, I mean, by the end, man, it was just, it felt really fulfilling, and it was just great, and I had to go back and get all the achievements, and but the other one being As Dusk Falls, because that was another one that sort of came out of nowhere, right? And it still is on Game Pass. And I think when it was first announced, I remember people sort of scoffed at it. I remember when it was first announced at E3, people scoffed at it because just the way that it looked, right? Everybody was like, I don't want to play
Yeah.
this slideshow.
That one.
Yeah. I don't want to play this slideshow. But man, like once you start playing it, that story is so immediately gripping. And again, also not a super long game either. I think I might have beaten it in maybe about 6 hours, give or take. But man, it was just so gripping and captivating, that story. And as is with these sorts of games, you have all these different routes depending on the choices that you choose, how you respond to certain situations, the actions that you take. And yeah, I mean, people can, live or die in this game depending on, your actions. And overall, yeah, it was just so well written and just a fantastic, fantastic story that I was really surprised by. Because again, you look at it and you go, well, but then you start playing it, and thank God for Game Pass, because otherwise I wouldn't have touched this, right? So, and that's the beauty of Game Pass, where you get sort of exposed to these sorts of games, and being able to have tried something like this, I'm so happy that I did, because it definitely was that gateway for me that exposed me to what I never knew was going to be definitely, arguably one of the top games of the year for me. So yeah.
Well, that's great to hear, but Dennis, I regret to inform you that you got to save your non-Switch games for the the non-Switch category coming later in the show.
Yep, you're right.
That's going to be a demerit.
Yep, that's gonna be a demerit. Yep.
Take a bullet.
But no, I have heard great things about that game. Yeah, I have a hard time getting over the art style, but
Yeah,
maybe
I know.
I'll check it
Dude,
out.
I'm telling you, just hit new game. I promise you.
All
You'll
right.
get into it.
All right, I'll put it on my list.
Okay.
All right, Luiz, what about you? What was the most surprising Switch game that you played this year?
Yeah, so that's a bit of complicated choice for me, because this year I didn't play a lot of the games that came out this year, but trying to find one that surprised me, I think it was not that big of a surprise, but it was kind of a surprise to play the new Lego Star Wars. It was in a sense of
yeah.
I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit different from the previous Lego games, but I wasn't expecting to be such a huge departure. I think the final result was truly something that made the series. It was a step forward for the series. It was really different from the previous ones, and they were on a roll, like releasing a lot of Lego licensed games that played very, very similar. So I was a little bit bored with the series. But I think Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga was like a point where it really made me interested in the game, where I played from beginning to the end, enjoying every single bit of it.
Yeah, and it's a massive game. I mean, it goes through all 9 mainline Star Wars films, and it's all like open world too, right? So it's like
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
even just looking at, apart from the fact that it's a Lego game, it's one of just the biggest Star Wars games flat out. I don't think a lot of people were expecting that scope.
Yeah, and they covered the story of all the 9 movies, so it has a lot of content, a lot of characters, places. For Star Wars fans, it really is a delight to play.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. Yeah, and the Switch port, I mean, I heard pretty good things about. It seems like it runs fairly well on the console, which is also surprising for a game of that scope.
Yeah, it runs. I think it's perfectly fine to play. The resolution is great. There are some moments where the frame rate dips, but nothing crazy. Usually, it's better than I expected, to be honest. Not perfect, but good enough.
It's a surprise that it runs as good as it does.
Yeah.
There you go. It's a good fit. No, that's a solid pick. Now, for me, my most surprising game. This was a surprise for multiple reasons. I'm giving this one to the Centennial Case, a Shijima story, which I don't know if you guys remember, but this is that weird Square Enix published FMV mystery game that's like set in like Japan. Is this one ringing a bell for anyone?
Yeah, I remember you really liking it when you had played it.
Yeah, I was really surprised by this one. So we just got sent a review copy, and I was like, sure, I'll check it out. And it's about a 10-hour game, and it's different from other story-driven games in that it's not it. Even though it's like a mystery story, it's not really like a choose-your-own adventure kind of thing. It's more along kind of the lines of like an LA noir situation where it's more about collecting the evidence, and then making connections between things. And at first, when I was playing it, I was a little like confused, and I was like, what am I even doing with this? But eventually, I think the best way to describe this to folks is it's almost like an interactive Japanese take on something like Knives Out, right? Like, if you go in expecting like a really serious mystery story, you're going to be very confused. But eventually you kind of realize that this game is like playing with you a little bit, and it's like there's a lot of like low-key comedy that plays out during like these really dark scenes. And it's very interesting from like a story and thematic perspective. It was also like the first like FMV game I played, and I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, because normally I'm like, oh, if I want to watch a movie, I'll watch a movie. If I want to play a game, I'll play a game. But yeah, so it was surprising on multiple levels for me, and I think this one's gonna kind of get like a cult classic status in the years to come.
I think
Nice.
FMVs, they've definitely, and I think this all has to do with just because of the technology now, but they've definitely like increased in quality over the last couple of decades, because they used to be like one of the most laughable things, right? But even though I have played, like Phantasmagoria, which like, I mean, that game is like funny to talk about just because of how over the top and ridiculous it is, but it is actually like a really good story. But that game came out in like 93, like, I mean, it's very, very old. And but yeah, no, I mean, I've actually like relatively enjoyed FMVs over the last couple of years. They've been like genuinely surprising me.
Yeah, it's another one of those genres that's gotten a little bit of a throwback. I mean, there's a good amount of them on the Switch. I don't know how good they all are, but clearly there's an audience out there for it. And the fact that Square Enix is now publishing stuff like this shows that there's enough of a market for it that we might start to see. I mean, shoot, like Immortality was up for quite a few
that's right,
awards
that's
at the Game Awards this year.
That was a really good
Yeah.
one too.
Yeah, I've really got to play that one. I feel like if I enjoyed this, I'll probably enjoy that one too.
Well, another one worth mentioning also, I mean, I played the demo of it a while back, but I really enjoyed it. I haven't played the full game, but like Death Come True is another FMV that was made by the creator of Danganronpa, so like you have people now coming from these, prestigious series now, working on FMVs. So, yeah.
Do people still bleed pink in that one?
Not in this one. No. But it definitely has some like stylized moments like Danganronpa does that.
That's hilarious. All right, so that was our first category. Let's move on to our second category. This one I've decided to call the Throwback Award, which we're gonna say this is your favorite Switch game that you played this year that came out in a previous year. So it could be something from the Switch's launch, could be a big game or a small game, but just something that did not come out this year, where we kind of dug into the back catalog a little bit. Now, Nicolas, let's start with you again. What are you giving your Throwback Award to this year?
So this isn't too much digging because it did come out like August of last year. But
fine.
it would be Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I love myself some Ace Attorney. I've really fallen in love with the series with Dual Destinies. And I'm just really happy that there's another game to play. Because it feels like even though it hasn't really been that long, it feels like it's been so long since we've had a new Ace Attorney game here. And I mean, that alone makes this something that was, something I could celebrate. But then the game itself is also so good. Both of the games were on 3DS originally and only released in Japan. And both of the games are included in this collection. And compared to a lot of other Ace Attorney games, these two tell a cohesive story. So the second game picks up just where the first one left off and references it a ton. And just the way they kind of formatted those two games together to tell one narrative works so well. I think it's genuinely one of the best, some of the best storytelling that the series has ever had. and I'm super happy that we finally got it. And I'm also really happy that it got localized the way it did, because Herlock Sholmes is just an amazing name.
It's true.
I remember hearing a lot about this game when it came out, and I guess I'm wondering, is this a good entry point for people who have not played an Ace Attorney game before?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
It's self-contained. You don't need any knowledge of any of the other games. So I think it could definitely be a good place to start.
Okay. That's awesome.
I always wanted to play that one. I never played the original ones, but I watched the anime, so I know all the story. And this one, I hear a lot of people saying that the first one is not like so good as the second one, but you have to play the first one to experience the greatness of the second one. So I don't know if when you mention how they are connected, it is related to that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I like the first one a lot. I think the second one ends up being stronger in part because the first one has that setup, you know? Like, it manages to pick up all the elements that the first game laid down and then tell an even greater story that feels even, like, grander and more encompassing. But I think both games are good, personally.
That sounds awesome, yeah.
Yeah, no, that one's definitely on my list, too. I think I always get intimidated by these really long-running franchises. I'm like, oh, like I know this is technically like a spin-off, but there's all these other games in the franchise, but I do really want to dip into this one at some point, because I've heard nothing but great things about it. Yeah, it's definitely a throwback, considering there used to be 3DS games at one point. So, yeah, glad to see them get a new lease on life.
The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles also looks incredible on an OLED. Also, might I add, like it's beautiful on that screen.
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, as does pretty much everything, if we're being honest. But
well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, let's pass it over to you. What are you giving your throwback award to for this year?
Yeah, well, I'm glad Nicolas mentioned Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, because like I almost went with that one actually, because I played that this year as well, and what a phenomenal game it was. But no, my main one though would definitely have to be kind of similar actually, but Famicom Detective Club is definitely my throwback game of the year. Yeah, because those stories, man, are like, wow. Like, and the fact that they were remade so beautifully, especially when you see screenshots of the original one on Super Nintendo, I believe they were on.
I think they were NES, weren't they?
Oh, were they NES? Oh my
they
god,
were old. Like,
yeah, Jesus. But it's crazy to see, because and it goes to show that Nintendo can do these visual novels like really, really incredibly, and like I want them to do more, man. Like we can't, like this isn't enough.
Oh my god! I mean, it was such an amazing, like technically it was beautiful. The story was thrilling, and maybe you could say some of the actual like detective point and click mechanics are a little archaic, but even still, I don't think it was by any means like bad or insurmountable. So yeah, I would love to see them dig deeper into their back catalog in this way. Yeah, because they were absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, and they both blew me away, man. Like the moment the credits rolled on each of those, after I got done playing them, I was like, wow. Like that whole story, I was so engrossed, and yeah, I couldn't praise them enough. I still can't praise them enough. Yeah, so yeah, those are definitely my throwback games of the year that I'm very happy that I revisited.
The incredible thing is that, if I'm not mistaken, those were written by Sakamoto, which is the producer on Metroid. He still is the producer on Metroid. So the guy still is at Nintendo. I would love to see him trying to write. He clearly is a good writer. So I would love to see him trying to write something like that again.
I would love that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good pick. Yeah, hopefully more people will go and play those games, because they're definitely something special, for sure.
Absolutely.
Luiz, what about you? What are you giving your throwback award to this year?
Initially, I was going to give it to GTA Trilogy, but I've been thinking a bit more here. I think the game doesn't deserve that. And the other one, the other one that I have here in my mind that I just remembered, it's Tokyo Mirage Sessions, the Fire Emblem crossover Shin Megami Tensei, and it was a game that I started to play in the middle of this year, and unfortunately I didn't finish because Xenoblades came out. So I still hadn't had the opportunity to come back to this game, but I was having an absolute blast. It was like that classic Atlas style of RPG that we see on Persona, on Shin Megami Tensei, and I was having a blast with the game, with the characters. It is like a very, compared to something like Persona or Shin Megami Tensei, I think it is a cozy JRPG, I would say. The stakes are not super high, and a lot of the stuff about idols and music and stuff like that, it's a little bit silly, but the combat is so fun to play, and the dungeons are well designed. So it was just a JRPG that I was playing mostly for the gameplay, the strategy, the combats. You can link a lot of different attacks and make a ton of damage to enemies. So it's a game that I really want to go back to, just to finish. I think I finished the first half of the game, and I want to go back. And it was one of the best experiences that I played this year. And if I had more time, I would probably have finished the game already.
Yeah, no, this is one that I've always been curious about. I love all the classic Atlas RPGs. I love me some Persona and Shin Megami Tensei, and this one has always just seemed like really high quality. I still don't really understand the whole Fire Emblem like integration.
It doesn't matter, to be honest. It is really more of a fun service, small stuff, side stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it all just looks so stylish and so vibrant, and
Yeah.
when people were begging for Persona to come over to Switch, which now we're getting, this was the closest thing we all had for a while.
True. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I see more. I never played Shin Megami Tensei. I've only seen some of the gameplays, but sometimes I feel that Tokyo Mirage Sessions is more close to Persona than to Shin Megami Tensei, because it has a lot of the social elements. You talk with different characters, you develop the relationship through missions, stuff like that.
Yeah, setting wise, it looks closer to that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't take place in an apocalypse.
Yeah, it is way more colorful.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick. Yeah, you guys are making me realize all these big RPGs I need to go play. It's not good. As for me, my kind of throwback game this year that I played towards the start of the year, actually, I think before we were really doing the podcast, was Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity, which is basically a full-on sequel to Breath of the Wild. The reason I really wanted to play this one is because the big thing that I missed from playing Breath of the Wild was I wanted more story. I wanted more cutscenes. I wanted a bigger focus on the plot. I didn't really like how they structured, like, just putting the memories around the world, and it was very non-linear. It just wasn't my jam in particular. So I really loved this game because it gave me what I felt like I was missing from Breath of the Wild. And it actually, I think, led to me appreciating that game a little bit more.
I can see
Thanks.
that. Yeah. It has definitely a more linear, normal story, I would say. I'm not that big of a fan of the story in Age of Calamity. Some of the choices, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
But, man, the cinematography is great. I love those scenes. It's fun sometimes just to rewatch them on YouTube. And it definitely has some great moments. I also think the gameplay is it's a really nice... it gives a cool twist to the classic Musou formula. I think it's way more engaging, the style of combat. So I also enjoy that.
Yeah. Similar to some of the other crossovers they've had, it's a fantastic mix of just, standard Warriors gameplay and also tons of actual Breath of the Wild elements. It does a great job of kind of just having both of those work in a weird kind of cohesive mix.
Yeah, and it can get pretty tough at times. I mean, I think, the only thing with this game that, like, kind of turned me off is just how much... I just feel like there was a lot more to do in the menus than I really wanted to do. Like, between all of the, equipping all these different weapons and fusing things. And, I just wanted to be in the action and in the world a little bit more.
Guys.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And especially because I felt like it did feel a little bit more tactical and a little bit more involved than other Musou games that I've played.
True. Did you had any issues with the frame rates? Because I played at launch, and I remember that the game was a little bit rough.
I mean, there were some drops. I mostly played in docked mode, and I don't. It was a while ago, but I don't remember anything so egregious that it stands out to me now. You know, I definitely think they've improved it.
Yeah, I remember when I played it, it definitely has a lot of, it has some frame rate drops and stuff like that, but just, I feel like you come to accept that with Warriors games to an extent. And
On Switch, anyways, yeah.
yeah,
So much crazy stuff happening at the same time.
and I feel like most of the time, the drops don't end up bothering me too much because they take place when you use like your big special attacks and there's tons of particle effects and tons of enemies dying, and you don't have control at that point anyways. But I don't know. It's definitely something that I wish wasn't the case, but I feel like it doesn't impact the game as severely as some people might expect. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I still think worst case scenario was whatever that nonsense was when they decided to port Hyrule Warriors to
3DS?
the 3DS. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whatever that
I
nonsense
never
like-
played
was.
that one. Yeah.
It was like regular 3DS too, right? Not even new 3DS.
Nope. The only one that
what
was
was
new
the
3DS
thought
was
process
Fire
there?
Emblem Warriors. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Fire Emblem Warriors, when they brought that over, was new 3DS only. But yeah, Hyrule Warriors, for some reason, was also available on the regular 3DS, and yeah, that was a mess. That was an absolute mess.
You've got to applaud their ambition at the very least.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Linkle out of it, so there's that. But I mean, that was really the only good thing.
I mean, during that time when Nintendo realized that the Wii U was not going to be a success, they were like, put everything that you
Oh
can
god,
on the
abandon
3DS.
ship.
Oh. Well, this is actually a great transition into our next category, which is most disappointing. The game that we were all looking forward to the most, that ended up letting us down. And yeah, we'll keep this one fairly short, but it's worth calling out because there were a couple this year. Nicolas, let's start with you. What was the most disappointing game for you this year?
So to be frank, there isn't really one. There wasn't really
okay.
a Switch game I played this year where I just really did not enjoy myself and I thought it was awful. I do think if I were to nominate one that was most disappointing, it would probably be Legends Arceus. And again, I don't think that game is bad. I think it's good, and I think it is, it was a necessary step forward for the franchise. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like it feels more like a really, really good proof of concept than a really, really good game, if that makes sense. There's just a lot about it that still needs refining. I think the combat system, even though some of the changes that were made were interesting, still doesn't really work well with the gameplay. It ends up feeling less tactical because of the weird kind of action time system, and the map doesn't work as well as I would like it to. Side quests still feel kind of funky. There's just like a lot of it that I still feel needs refining, and even though it's a nice step in the franchise, we've had to take so many steps in the Pokemon franchise, and we still haven't gotten to the point where I would like the series to be. And I wish that Arceus could have taken just an extra step and gotten us there.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Yeah, because the game does have a lot of really exciting elements to it. It was a big step forward in a lot of ways, but I do know it didn't quite hit in the same way that a lot of people had hoped that the first true open world Pokemon would work. So, no, I think that's fair. I mean, a game can still be a good game and still be disappointing in some regards,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
I think it does several things better than Scarlet and Violet, which is not...
Yeah, that's the funny thing, right? I was going to ask you, Nicolas, because you didn't play Scarlet and Violet yet, right?
No, I haven't. I don't really plan to at this point.
I was wondering if you have played Scarlet and Violet this year, if this would be your biggest disappointment, or do you think do you think Arceus is worse?
So, I mean, the thing is, if I had played Scarlet and Violet, I don't think it would have been my biggest disappointment, because I didn't really have that many expectations for it anyways.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's good.
But, Yeah, I mean, I think as a game, I would probably prefer Arceus, just because I like some of what it's doing. I like the different steps it's taking. I like the fact that they released one game as opposed to two versions, because that's definitely it's definitely something I would like them to stop doing. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good pick. Dennis, what about you? What was the most disappointing game you played this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, anyone who's been listening to the podcast says, this won't be a surprise. I mean, and we talked about the news earlier, and I wanted to reserve any comments that I had for this. But Mario Strikers Battle League for sure. I mean, what a waste of time, really.
You can't say that. The World Cup just ended.
Which is great. Which is great. So hopefully they watched, so they can get a couple pointers on what entertainment looks like, because you won't find that here at Mario Strikers Battle League, man. It is just, oh man. I mean, and the fact that this third and final update, presumably final update according to Nintendo UK, is, it's just like these characters that we've gotten haven't really contributed anything. They should have been there from the start, and it's just an all around big $60 disappointment.
It's not a $60 package, and it still really isn't.
At most, that game should have been definitely like a budget, because like they do so many budget Kirby titles. But I think because this should have been a budget Mario title, but because it had the name Mario in it, they were just like, immediately it's a premium title.
Yeah, I don't think that exists. A budget Mario title? What is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But they should have done that with this, or at least made it free to play, because that's what it feels like. It feels like a free to play game, honestly.
It feels like it might have landed. I mean, think about something like Rocket League, right? Like Rocket League is a pretty simple game. You're doing pretty much the same thing over and over again. The arenas, I mean, there's some variety in the arenas and stuff, but ultimately it's the same thing. But that game is now free to play, and it reaches a massive amount of people, and they're regularly updating it with new content. So like something like that could have worked for something like this.
Absolutely. I mean, as someone who has put a bunch of hours into Rocket League, let me tell you, I love that game. I love Rocket League. The gameplay loop is great, but you're absolutely right in terms of comparing it, where it's like, look, it's a very simple concept. It's not asking much of you. You're doing the same thing pretty much over and over again. But they have such a way with the gameplay loop and the fluidity of it all that it keeps it consistent and it keeps it fun. And then with the constant updates, obviously, because it is a free-to-play live service title, versus something like this where, this is a premium paid package that is, it should have been a free-to-play live service title, but they're treating it like it is just a local-only game that I don't know. It's just a waste of time.
No, I think that's a fair statement. And Luiz, most disappointing game for you? I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, it's the same game for me. Like, I don't even have the game. I just played the demo, but I think that the demo is basically the game, because Nintendo even knows that, because you can only play the demo 7 matches. So they know that the game has so little content that if they make a demo that you can play anytime you want, you're basically receiving the whole game. But beyond that, I just think the game was, when I was playing, first I tried to play alone, then I tried to play with my brother. It felt as the game was actively trying to make me not have fun. Like all the mechanics, everything, it didn't work in a way that felt connected, felt fun to play. I think we played 2 matches that ended in a draw, 0-0. So no one even made a goal. That's the worst case scenario for a football game. So yeah, it was really not a fun experience to play. And I had a lot of expectations because I love next level games. I think usually Nintendo puts the minimal amounts of efforts in Mario games to make them at least fun to play. And with this one, it was just a huge disappointment. And every time that I go back to play the Wii one, or even the one on the GameCube, I have a lot more fun. And they are way simpler experiences. I think they try to make the game more competitive, they try to add more stuff, and it felt more complicated than it should be. At least to me, that was my experience.
Yeah, it's wild that, like, Strikers Charged on the Wii, which released, 15 years ago at this point, still feels like a more complete, better experience than Battle League.
Totally. Yeah. It feels more a more complete package, a game with more personality, and in general, just a better game.
maybe there was just a different sort of mindset at the time too, because especially on the Wii, I mean, you were starting to see them come in, but updates weren't as prominent as they are now,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of games that released back then, especially with the Wii still being a mostly offline console, it had online capabilities obviously, but like compared to like PS3 and 360 at the time, that the Wii was not where you went for when you wanted to, do online gaming, So, so there still was that mindset of like, all right, look, we gotta do our best to have, a complete finished game by the time this comes out. At retail. So, but now it's like, yeah, it don't matter. Just, we should spend 2 years of development time here, but instead we're only going to do about 8 months, and then we'll just sell an early access title for $60. Why not?
It feels exactly like this. Yeah.
I mean, even outside of that, there's just decisions in the design, like the fact that all stages are basically identical and just visually different, as opposed to having actual different layouts and like gimmicks and whatnot. There's just for a Mario game that's confusing. It'd be like having a Mario Kart game where none of the tracks have like gimmicks, where they're all just like standard racing tracks. That doesn't make sense.
And like the actual fields never change. It always is green grass. So it's the part that you look the most during the match. You only see the other parts of the stadium during cutscenes. So all the stadiums feels really similar.
Yeah, that's the weird thing too, right? Is like it's that camera angle where it's just like, I mean, you're always looking at that grass. So really, those stages, they don't make a difference. Like at all. There's nothing about them. You can't appreciate them because of the camera angle, and like you're too busy, looking directly down, on like a bird's eye view at the ball. You're not looking at, the decor. You're not looking at, the millions of toads in the seats.
The 7 skyscrapers
just not paying
spent
attention
like
to that
20
stuff.
hours to earn.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, yeah. No, it's a shame to see. Hopefully, this is not the end of the franchise, because I know a lot of people are still hungry for a good Mario Strikers game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll see it at some point. Let's switch gears here a little bit for this next category: best non-Switch game that you played this year. So, something that you guys played this year that was not a Switch game that really stuck out to you. Nicolas, let's start with you. Although I think you were telling me earlier.
Yeah, so for the record, I own a Switch and I have a laptop with Steam on it. I sadly do not own any of the other consoles, so I didn't really get the chance to play anything non-Switch this year since I don't do too much gaming on my laptop. So I don't really have anything applicable here.
That's totally fair.
Not even a mobile game.
No.
Yeah, that's fair.
Does the Splatnet 3 app on Nintendo Switch Online count?
Oh my god. Nicolas is a true Nintendo fan.
I'm sorry, I would like to own a PS5, but I have other things that I need to be saving for.
The Nintendo overlords are happy to hear that you have remained loyal to
So
their
I'm a faithful subject, apparently.
Exactly. Yes. No, that's okay. We are a Nintendo show after all. What about you, Dennis? I know you like to branch out sometimes. What was your favorite non-Switch game that you played this year?
It was the one that probably got snubbed the most at the Game Awards, which was A Plague Tale Requiem.
How dare you?
That game,
You should have said Xenoblade.
well, it was good, and that's true that it did get snubbed in a couple of categories, especially the soundtrack category. But yeah, no, I mean, my God, man, it's just, I mean, the Game Awards this year was basically the God of War show, right? But like there were so many categories that A Plague Tale was also in where I'm like, man, like that should have gone to that. I mean, God of War, I don't want to take anything away from it because it is absolutely a, work of high quality art that is comprised of some of the most talented people in the business. And I haven't played Ragnarok yet, but I have played the 2018 God of War, and that game is absolutely incredible and deserves all the praise that it gets. So it's not surprising that Ragnarok is following that, following in the footsteps. But man, like Plague Tale, like is just so good in terms of its storytelling, and there's nothing really quite like Plague Tale either when you think about it. I mean, yeah, there's mostly a stealth game, and there's millions of stealth games, but the way in which it handles that stealth, and then especially the combat that you do through mainly Amicia, but and a little bit through Hugo as well, her little brother. Um, but because she's not a fighter, right? But because she has to survive under the circumstances that she's in, during the plague, um, it's she does what she can to survive, right? And it's you see that character development and that growth come through the gameplay as well, yeah, I mean just through the gameplay, and you feel that as a player also. And but with Reckham in particular, you definitely see a new side to her, and it's a much darker and much more emotional story as well. That she's sort of at her limit, right? Like she's breaking, right? Because she's like, I'm so sick of all this, and forgive me, I can't remember her entire name, but Charlotte McBurney, I want to say her name is the voice actress, and I think she does the mocap as well for Amicia, is so raw and real and genuine that there's moments in this game where like I'm just so taken aback by her just being like I'm not gonna let you hurt Hugo and stuff like that, and just like her delivery on those lines and the cracking of the voice, the strain of the throat that you hear through the stress that she's in. It just all feels so genuine, and just seeing Amicia as a character absolutely lose it. She tries to see the good in everyone, and Hugo as well. And she doesn't want to be violent, but in this game she just absolutely loses it, and she's like, "You're not listening, fine, I'm done." And then she just like starts going to town, and that's it. It's just so crazy to see her transformation, for better or for worse, really. It's in a weird way, it's scary. I mean, you're rooting for her, right? But it's I think, anyways, before I get too sidetracked on just the character development and the story and everything, the game itself is just so fantastic, and definitely a highlight of the year for me in terms of non-Switch stuff, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a really great choice. I played the original game. I haven't gotten around to the sequel yet, but I've heard in terms of pretty much all of it, in terms of like continuing the story, it's a great sequel. In terms of expanding the scope of the gameplay, and just really being like a showcase for just next gen visuals. It's just blows everything away. So that was definitely high on my list for sure. I'm really glad that you had a chance to play it and that it was a winner for you.
Yeah, it's definitely great. Well, and again, I have to, it's like I was saying earlier about As Dusk Falls, I have to thank Game Pass for that. Game Pass has really fed me well this year, man. Like, honestly, just because there's been so many great games and, so little time, and obviously a lot of that would, cost, a fortune if you bought every single one of those individually. So Game Pass has definitely made a lot of that very accessible for me. And, they've fed me well this year, for sure. So, yeah.
It's a good problem to have, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Luiz? What was your favorite non-Switch game that you played this year?
So for a while I was just like Nicolas. I just played Nintendo for a long time, I think recently. And at the end of last year I bought my Series S, because here's the thing, I wanted to play some of those third-party games. And the Series S with a Game Pass subscription just sounds absolutely amazing. So I've been playing a lot of stuff that I missed during these years. I think one of the best ones was probably Psychonauts that I've played last year. But considering the ones of this year, I think was probably Forza, the Forza Horizon 5 that released this year. Just because it was such an amazing experience, like a truly next-gen experience, I should say, because the graphics are just so good in this game, and you can just drive in the open world and have a relaxing kind of experience. Like, I think it's the ideal kind of game for me to play at the Xbox, because I think it's the kind of game the kind of experience that I'm never going to get on the Switch, right? Not only because the Switch can't run something like that, but because we don't see a lot of racing simulator to that with a similar scope on the Switch. So I think Forza was one of a really great experience that I had this year, and it still is a game that sometimes I'm bored, I don't have anything to do, and I just want to drive a little bit, so I'll turn the game on and play it. Sadly, it is a really gigantic game, and the SSD on the Series S is not that big, so sometimes it is not installed, but sometimes I left it installed just so I can play whenever I want.
Yeah. No, those games are amazing to just kind of lose yourself in like the sensation of driving and just soaking in some gorgeous vistas and
exactly.
Yeah, I haven't played 5 yet, but I want to, mostly because it takes place in Mexico, which is like just really close to where I live, and I really want to see how it's been recreated with all the desert scenery in this game. I've heard it's a very beautiful game, and yeah, it's you can never go wrong with a Forza game when you're looking for something like that.
Yeah.
It does make you realize the shortage of those games on Switch, and I do hope that if we do someday get a more powerful version of the system, that hopefully we'll be able to get some more of these ports. But like even the new Need for Speed game that just came out, that one hasn't even hit like PS4 and Xbox One. So
yeah.
Imagine
it's a little bit of a shame, but
imagine Mario Kart 9, but it's just open world driving around the Mushroom Kingdom.
Oh, that would be cool, yeah.
I'd be all for that, though, yeah.
Nicolas, you might be onto something here, man.
I'm willing to sell the idea. Just,
Yeah, Nintendo, you have our email. It's in the show notes. Feel free to reach out. Yeah, no, that's a really, really great pick. I definitely want to get to that one at some point, too. The game that I, out of all the third-party stuff I played this year on other platforms, which was quite a bit, actually, the one that I think is really going to stick with me in the long run was Stray, the science fiction cat 3D platformer adventure game, for lack of a better way to say it. It was just, I'm not going to pretend like it was the most earth-shattering thing in the world. I mean, ultimately, it's a pretty simple. Even calling it a platformer is a bit of a stretch, because you kind of like auto snap jump to whatever you're trying to reach. So it really is just more just a straight up adventure game. It's all about exploring and solving some light puzzles here and there, figuring out where to go, really just feeling small and having to navigate in this big world where everything is unfamiliar. And it does feel unfamiliar because the setting is just really interesting. And actually, as you go through the game, you learn more and more about like, why are all these robots here, and where am I, and what's going on. And it really, I think they did a great job kind of unraveling the situation and fleshing out the lore of this world and everything. And playing as a cat, man, I mean, you had me at that.
It's amazing. Yeah, that was a big like seller for me.
We were talking about simulators earlier. Use your cat simulator.
Cat simulator is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think a little more arcadey, I think, than I initially thought it was going to be, but it's just the amount of detail they poured into like making this cat like feel like a real living creature is astonishing. So
I didn't catch. Did you play this on PlayStation or your PC?
I played it on my PlayStation. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I got it on PC, but yeah, no, beautiful game.
Yeah, definitely one, like, crank up the ray tracing and seeing it,
For sure,
all
for
the
sure.
neon colors and stuff. It's a looker, for sure. All right, next category, and I think just in the interest of time, we'll do this last category, and then we'll get into our favorite games of the year, because that's kind of a three-tiered thing. Most anticipated game coming out next year. We don't know everything about Switch's release calendar for next year, obviously, but we do know a little bit. And so I'm wondering, just kind of based on what we know so far, what's everyone looking forward to the most? Nicolas, let's start with you.
So Tears of the Kingdom is up there, which I think, it probably is for all of us. But more interestingly for me is Octopath Traveler 2. I'm just so excited to have more Octopath Traveler. I finally finished the game earlier this year, actually, before this was announced. So it was great timing, and it really made me... I actually looked up after the game ended, because I remembered Square Enix mentioning that they were working on a second game, like, years and years ago, and I hadn't heard anything since, so I thought, oh, well, maybe that got canceled or something happened, oh well. And then...
It's the mobile game.
But then this got announced, and like, I'm so excited. It looks even better than the original. Like, it's like they've basically taken all the experience they've had working on HD2D in the meantime, on things like Triangle Strategy, Live Alive, and they're like fed it back into Octopath, and now it looks so good. It looks even better than the original. It's like to have great music. All the mechanics seem like they're basically just refining what was in the original. I don't really know what else to say. It's more Octopath. I love Octopath. I just am so excited for this to release.
Yeah. Yeah, especially just, I mean, the whole HD 2D art style, we've been getting so many games with this, and that alone is just really exciting to have another RPG in this just beautiful art style.
Yeah.
But yeah, this seems like they really want to make this into an ongoing thing, and I'm really curious to see how they will iterate like the story, and kind of take this interwoven, these 8 characters, and take that approach and do something different with it or expand it somehow. I don't know. I don't really know what to expect with this one.
Well, they've already showed, actually, one of the big criticisms with the original game was that all 8 of the stories are basically completely disconnected. As in, they sort of link together at the end, but for the most part, your characters don't really interact at all. They don't really have any meaningful interaction in each other's story other than like small little bits and pieces of dialogue that are kind of there for flavor text. And they've already shown that for Octopath 2, there's going to be joint character stories. I think so far we've seen like characters paired up, where they're going to have some kind of plot line that they share between the two, and it's going to be a lot more active in that sense, which is exciting. It's the one thing that most people kind of were disappointed with in the original, and they're addressing it. So that's nice.
Yeah, no, yeah, that is really nice to hear. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this one turns out, and it's coming out in the spring, I believe. So.
Oh, it's coming out like February. It's earlier than that, yeah.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah, not far away at all.
The month of releases.
Pretty much. Yeah. Good luck to everyone out there. It's going to be a hell of a month. Dennis, what about you? What are you most looking forward to next year?
Yeah, there's definitely a few, but I think just to keep it Switch related, probably Fire Emblem Engage, for sure. I love Fire Emblem, man, and Fire Emblem Engage just looks like such a great time. I mean, from the story to the graphics, it looks a lot more polished now, and hope, at least so far from what we've seen, I'm just hoping it's not like just a jagged mess like Three Houses was. Three Houses had a great art direction, but man, that game was difficult to look at from time to time. Like, especially since I wanted to play it on the TV so often, but I ended up forcing myself to play it handheld just because that way, it would sort of compress itself a little bit on the smaller screen. Because on a big 4K screen, oh no, that that did not. It was not fit for that display. Let me just say. But
this one, you've got Koei Tecmo helping with this one, and they've put out great games on the Switch visually.
That is true. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Koei Tecmo, so it definitely brings my expectations up a little bit. And so far, from everything that we've seen, it looks absolutely fantastic, super polished. The animations look incredible, and having that ability, even though it may seem like a kind of like a stupid gimmick, but still having that ability and that fan service to bring back so many of these legacy characters, all sort of celebrated pretty much into this one game, is really, really exciting. It almost feels like an anniversary type of game, so yeah, no, it's something that I'm super stoked for.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick. Luiz, what about you? What are you most looking forward to on the Switch in 2023?
Yeah, I think, as Nicolas said, Zelda is probably the biggest one, but just to not say the obvious one, I think I'll say here Pikmin 4. which, to be honest, it is like slated for 2023, but I don't think it will actually come out next year. Just because it doesn't look to be 100% like ready, but maybe they are hiding more stuff from us. I don't know exactly. Nowadays, Nintendo usually announce the game when it is close to release. But yeah, I just want to see the Pikmin series back. I think it's been a while since Pikmin 3, and I became a fan of the series with Pikmin 3, and then after that I played the first one and the second one, and to me it's like a perfect series. All the 3 games are super fun to play, and they are like they have a very similar style of gameplay, and I think here on the fourth one, from what Miyamoto said, we are probably going to see a very different game from the other ones, like in the strategy and the gameplay department. So yeah, I'm super curious to see the approach that they're going to have here, and I'm just super happy to see that Pikmin 4 actually is real. Like the moments that in that direct when Miyamoto talked about the game, it was a little bit unreal, and I think I'm still realizing that. But yeah, I'm excited to see more of the game.
Yeah, after so much time and so many people wondering if it even really ever existed in a serious form. Yeah, the fact that we know it's coming, even if we don't know anything about it, is a lot to get excited for.
What do you mean? It was close to completion like 3 years ago. He said so himself.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they said, but yeah. Well, don't feel bad about that one maybe being a stretch, Luiz, because mine is a bit of a stretch. But man, I gotta hope and pray. I really want Metroid Prime 4 to come out in 2023. Okay. No, look, and here's why I think it could happen, all right? Because January 2019, almost exactly 4 years ago, was when they first announced they were completely restarting development. So it is actually getting to the point where it is feasible that this game could be close to completion. Like 4 years is enough time to develop a game, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I didn't even give it that. Like, I didn't even think about that. No, you're absolutely right. Actually, we could actually see something from one. So that'd be so exciting.
And I mean, even when when Metroid Dread came out last year, they acknowledged like, you know, oh, we are still working on it, and we want to have more to share soon, but we're not quite ready yet. And we haven't heard anything since then. So that gives me more hope.
Don't worry, Nick.
This might be the
just
year.
like Pikmin 4, Prime 4 is close to completion.
I just hope that the development is going smoothly.
Yeah.
That because 4 years is all right, but it could be a problematic development. I hope that everything is going smoothly.
Yeah. I mean, in all seriousness, I do think expecting Prime 4 to be like holiday 2023, it's probably not like. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
I would probably go for early 2024, but I do think you can. It's not too outlandish to say it might release this year.
Yeah, I'm hoping I don't expect it, but I would be very happy to see it.
Yeah.
And maybe Metroid Prime Trilogy as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, well, now you're asking for too much. Come on now.
Can't ask for too much right here.
One or the other, not the two.
Yeah. I'll take 4 then. All right, so we'll get into our last thing here. I know this is a longer episode. So this is our last category, and it's our favorite Switch games of the year. So I asked everyone to put together their top 3 games, and keep the conversation flowing a little bit on this. But we'll start with our third favorite, and kind of alternate through, and then go to our second favorite, and so on and so forth, until we get to our favorite game of the year for each of us. So, Nicolas, of all the games you played this year, what was your third favorite Switch game?
Third favorite would be Splatoon 3. I think a huge part of it is that, I mean, because the thing is, the game is fundamentally, like, at launch, it's basically as good as Splatoon 2 was. There's maybe some slight improvements here and there. I do think it's a better game overall, but the big difference for me is that this is the first Splatoon game I've been able to play online with a friend, like, from the start of launch, and that has a huge impact on how you experience an online game. It's kind of just made me so much more invested in playing the game in general. It's made me kind of look into the community a bit more, look at like competitive trends and other people covering the game, and just kind of been a much more comprehensive experience. And I mean, it's clearly worked because I've been playing the game almost every day, like I mentioned earlier. So
Right.
yeah, it's gotten
no,
by.
honestly, I'm surprised it's not
gotten by the
higher up
nose.
for you, considering how much I know you love this game. But
Yeah, it's surprising because I don't usually play that many online games, but this one just hooked me. I don't know for how much longer it will hook me. If at some point I'll end up taking a break just because, I want to move on to something else. But for now, I'm still invested in it, and I've been playing for like 3 months now, so it's definitely I've got mostly praise for it.
what did they say, Nicolas, in the game? Don't get cooked. Stay off the hook is what they said.
Oh, that is that's from last game. It's outdated.
I know.
Come on now.
I know. All right. Well, no, great choice. Yeah, really great game. Totally deserves to be there. Dennis, what about you? What was your third favorite game that you played this year?
Probably Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for sure. I mean, that game was very difficult to put down, man, and it just had so much charm and was just so magical. I mean, Kirby's just one of the cutest characters like ever, so being able to play, again as Kirby with all these awesome abilities, and some of them new. It was just so satisfying, and then especially with these environments that were very clearly done and inspired by the former Mario Odyssey team that they got on board for this one. So and it shows. I mean, there's just so much detail and magic and wonder within each of these worlds, and then the levels they're in. And all the fun little secrets. I mean, yeah. I mean, whenever I play a Kirby game, I can't help myself. I always have to 100% it, and it was no different in this one. All the way through, up until the end, it was just pure joy, pure fun, and I had a smile on my face the whole time, which is, something that I hadn't really felt in a game in a very long time. And Kirby, yeah, it was just the best part the best way to explain it in the simplest terms is really it was just magical from beginning to end.
Yeah, it's the quintessential Nintendo 3D platformer.
Absolutely.
It's what everyone hopes when they pick up something like that, Yeah. Luiz, what about you? If you had to pick your third favorite, what would it be?
I don't think the word favorite is so fitting here, but as I said, I didn't play a lot of games that came out this year specifically during the year. So my pick would be Switch Sports. And I had fun
see why
with the
you
game.
threw that caveat in there now. Yeah. You're like, well, technically I played 3 Switch games this year, so technically...
Yeah. Like something like that, because I think the game I had more good moments than bad. It's not a game that disappointment that I didn't have fun, like something like Mario Strikers, as I mentioned before. But it was just a fun game, like a fun experience overall. I was expecting to see it being bigger, it having more sports, but it didn't have. But what I had here, I had a lot of fun playing volleyball. Nicolas was joking about this before, but golf was actually pretty fun. I downloaded the updates of golf and I played some matches online.
There you go.
And I managed to win some of them, so I feel that I'm pretty good at golf right now.
You had a few months to mentally prepare yourself for it.
Oh, a lot. I was waiting for this moment, and so overall it was just a nice experience. If we had something better, it would be probably here. But yeah, it's Switch Sports for me.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you had some fun with it. There's definitely fun to be had there. I definitely don't think it's like the worst game that came out this year or anything.
Oh no, yeah.
I think it fell flat for some folks, but I did have fun with it. I mean, I had some friends over and we booted it up for a little bit and played some bowling and stuff, and it was good mindless fun with friends,
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think that's a good pick. For me, if again played a lot of games this year, so this one's a hard one. And I actually didn't expect this one to make this list, but for me, honestly, I gotta give it to Lost Ruins. And this is, with the caveat being, first of all, I didn't play every major, first-party Nintendo game that came out this year. I think if I had played, Kirby, or if I had played Xenoblade Chronicles 3, obviously those things would be on this list instead. But I have to go, based on what I actually did play this year. And for me, honestly, Lost Ruins was start to finish just a ton of fun. And when I look back at the Switch games I played this year, I think it's one I'm actually gonna remember for quite some time. And it's not. What's crazy is like this is not the most unique game in the world, right? It's a 2D Metroidvania. It's got just really the things that make it stand out though are, first of all, it's got absolutely gorgeous pixel art. It combines pixel art and lighting in a way that just really pops and looks amazing on the OLED screen, which is mostly where I played this game. Second of all, I've never played a Metroidvania that tries to integrate like survival elements into it, which this game kind of does. Like, you really have to like do some resource management because as you're going around this world, like the combat is very difficult, and like ammo for like your bow and potions and things to heal yourself up with are very scarce. So you actually have to be very strategic as you are navigating this world. Like, you really have to decide, like, am I going to take the risk and enter this room? Am I going to try and sneak by these enemies? Am I going to take them head on? Like, it's a level of like thinking and like being very conscientious about what I'm doing that I don't usually feel when I play these types of games. So that really struck me. And it's just a very fun game to play. The combat is really fun. The story is not like the deepest thing in the world, but it does go some places towards the end of it and was pretty surprising. So I really enjoyed this one. And yeah, I would recommend it for sure.
Yeah, after you talked about it, because I remember that particular podcast. After you talked about it, I actually went ahead and I went ahead and picked it up myself. But I bought it on Xbox though. But unfortunately, I haven't had the time to play it just yet. But yeah, you definitely sold me on it, and everything you said was pretty much why it appealed to me so much, especially the whole Metroidvania aspect of it. But yeah, I haven't played it just yet, but it's definitely on my backlog, waiting to be enjoyed.
Yeah, it's not a long game. It's like probably 6 to 8 hours is
Oh, okay,
where
that's
it's
good. That's good.
pegged for how long to beat. So yeah, definitely the kind of thing that you can get through in a good amount of time. But yeah, I definitely recommend it for sure. All right, we're up to the silver award now. So second favorite picks that we played this year. We're gonna circle back around to Nicolas. What was your second favorite game that you played this year?
Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I mean, everything Dennis said applies. It's great. Great transition to 3D. It's charming. It's just plain simple fun. I love it. It's great. It was a fantastic game. I can't wait to see what they do next.
Yeah. Hopefully they stick with this formula for a little bit, because the way it landed with people, it would be a shame if they didn't make another game like this.
Makes me really curious how they'll iterate on it further, to be honest.
Yeah. That is a game that I definitely need to go around to playing soon, especially hearing all you guys' high praise. I've got to make it a priority for sure. Dennis, second favorite pick?
Yeah, so the silvers definitely have to go to Live Alive for me. Yeah, Live Alive, man, what a fantastic game. I mean, I love that format of multiple types of mini stories coming in together to contribute to a larger story, which I think is why I love Octopath Traveler so much. And everything that Nicolas said earlier about Octopath Traveler was pretty much spot on. And I'm also excited for Octopath Traveler too. But Live Alive and that HD2 engine, man, is just too good. I mean, just what an incredible piece of technology that is, really. I mean, it makes everything just so beautiful. But yeah, no, Live Alive was just incredible, man. Like, every story, well, maybe not every story, but most stories were pretty solid, and great pacing, great length to contribute to. I think after I was done, it was probably a little under 40 hours. I probably want to say 35 hours by the time I was finished with Live Alive. But yeah, I mean, it was just so good. All the different stories coming together and being developed and conceived by so many different teams also. Again, it just really felt like a celebration of not only the genre of JRPGs, but the celebration of all this talent, right? That comes from a variety of backgrounds and just works of art within the medium that contributed to this. And man, yeah, I would love to see more um, games like this in the future, like Live Alive, whether it's a Live Alive 2 or just something called completely different that just kind of takes the same idea of like, all right, let's just take a bunch of different short stories and compile it into this game that contribute to a larger whole. Yeah, it's brilliant. Live Alive was fantastic all the way through.
Yeah, I think that one kind of snuck by some folks just with how close it released to Xenoblade 3, but everyone I know
Definitely.
who played it really loved it. So, yeah, glad to see that one getting some recognition. Um, let's see. Oh, I lost track of my list. Luiz, it's your turn. What was your silver award going to this year?
So it's a game that I already mentioned here. So it's Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, and again the same thing. It was a game that surprised me in a very positive way. I was a little bored with the Lego series, so to see them taking a more adventurous take on the game, getting more single player experience out, it was truly one of the greatest experience that I had on Switch with games that released this year.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. Yeah, again, like this is what's exciting about this is like every game's hit different with different people, and like just never know when something's going to come out of the way and surprise you a little bit and make it high up in your personal list. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad this game landed with you. For me, my second favorite pick, I've got to give it to Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope.
Oh.
I was really debating making this one my first choice. It was really hard, but yeah, I loved this game. It was I think I loved it more than the original. It's definitely a bigger game for sure. I mean, they've pretty much completely, they took a lot of the things that were great about the first game, and they just made everything better. I love the new structure for exploring the worlds. Like, I love that you actually have these big environments that you really feel like you're exploring now and navigating, rather than just going from battle to battle. I really enjoy all the changes they've made to the actual strategy gameplay, how it borders on something more real time now, and it all feels more action centric while still being very strategic. In some ways, even more. Now that you can equip the different sparks to your characters, you really have to think about your loadout before you go into every single battle, because you really have to, even more so than in the first game, you really need to like look at the battlefield, look at your enemy's weaknesses, and be like, all right, I can only equip X amount of sparks. How do I want to do this? Who do I want to give what? Who can reach this part of the battlefield the fastest, etc. It's just a great game, it's top to bottom. Looks great on Switch. Music is great. Everything about it is great. Really recommend it.
Yeah, you're really going to have to get around to that.
Yeah, it is a long game.
eventually.
Like you, if you want to see everything, and be comprehensive, like you're looking at a good like 50-hour experience, which was
Nothing.
never longer than I expected going in. Well, okay, for a Xenoblade fan, yeah, it's nothing. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it for folks, when you have the time to get around with it. And also, without just spoiling anything, it does do some cool things with Mario characters and the Mario universe as a whole.
Ooh.
So,
Ooh, that's interesting. I hope this game gets a little more attention, because I feel that at the end of the year, with all these releases like Xenoblade, Bayonetta, it got a little bit lost in the middle of all that. So I hope that in the future, for the moment, I'm just waiting for a sale, because Ubisoft games usually get a sale. So I'm just waiting for that. But I really want to play this one.
yeah, this will be the one Mario game that does go on sale sometime.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you'll love to see it. All right. Well, folks, we are on our final round of awards. Thank you to everyone who has stuck around. I know this is a long episode, but we don't get to do stuff like this too often, so wanted to make it something kind of special. So we're going to go around the group one more time and do our Gold Award, or Game of the Year, whatever you want to call it. Favorite game you played on the Switch this year. and I think I already know how this is going to go for at least one or two of the folks here, but we're going to go through it anyways. Nicolas, surprise us. What's your game of the year?
I'm offended that you think I'm so predictable. but yes, it goes to Xenoblade 3. It's not really... I mean, yeah. I am a Xenoblade fan. This is a Xenoblade game. It's pretty much, despite some of the problems that I had with the game's ending, where I think it could have done a bit of a better job, it's still pretty much everything I wanted. It has so many improvements over the series. It innovates in some really cool ways. Every time I think about the game or I look back on it, it just makes me want to replay it, to the extent that when the next wave of DLC comes out, I probably will replay it. So it was great music, great story, great characters, great gameplay. I loved it top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I expected as much because it was the thing you talked about the most this year, for sure. Would you say, I mean, like, okay, I know these are long games, but if you really wanted to get through and just see the story and see some of the more important side quests, do you think you could get through it in like a reasonable amount of time? Like, what would you say?
Well, depends on what you define as reasonable. So I basically completed the game, but that took me like 240 hours. So I spent a lot of time doing basically everything imaginable. If you just wanted to see the story, I could imagine you doing it in like probably 50. If you didn't get too distracted, maybe like 80 at most. But again, that really depends on how much side content you're going to want to do. And in general, I feel like you're going to want to do some of the side content because the side content is really good. The side quests are really good and they add a lot of character.
And not only that, but they are integrated in the main story. So you'll be doing just doing a little bit of exploration and you're going to bump into a side story. So you're going to be interested in it and trying to go to the end. So the side content is really integrated with the main content in Xenoblade. I don't think you're going to finish the game in less than 100 hours.
Okay.
If it's New Game Plus and you skip all the cutscenes, then maybe.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say this here, and I want you guys to hold me to it. But at some point next year, I'm going to play the first Xenoblade game. I don't know when.
Awesome.
I don't know when next year, but I'm finally gonna do it because I'm tired of everyone talking about this series and me not understanding why it's so amazing. So.
Hopefully, you enjoy it.
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah, I think I will. I love me some good anime RPG nonsense. So.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
All right, Dennis, your game of the year, man. What's it gonna be?
Yeah. So everyone knows I'm a big Pokemon fan, even though I'm like very critical of them. But that's only because I've been around this series since the beginning, since I was 7. So here we are, 25 years later. With or however long Pokemon's been around, 20 years, whatever. Still playing them. So, but honestly, the first one has to go to Pokemon Legends Arceus, though. That is probably the game I spent the most time on this year. I think according to my Nintendo wrap-up, I spent probably almost like about 160 hours on it. So yeah, I was on it a lot, and I did everything I could possibly do in that game. We did the Pokedex, got check marks on, completed every single individual Pokemon's tasks as well.
Seriously? Oh god.
And
wow, that is a lot of time.
Yep, did all of that. Yep, and yeah, basically did all the quests that I could do that were listed, both the main stuff obviously and the side stuff. And yeah, I mean that game is nothing but a paperweight now to me. But yeah, no, I mean it was such a great game despite its technical issues and how incredibly ugly that game was. From a gameplay perspective, it was super fun, really refreshing for a Pokemon game. And it was something that I didn't realize that I really needed, and also that I feel like the series needed for a very long time. And it was nice to see Scarlet and Violet, adopt some of those methods. It didn't adopt everything. It still very much feels more in line with a traditional Pokemon game, despite the open world aspect of it. But Pokemon Legends Arceus was just a really good take on where the series can go, you know, and it is an exciting prospect. And for what we got so far, even though I agree with everything Nicolas said earlier in some of his criticisms about, you know, it feeling like a really good proof of concept because it's true, you know. So, and I'm not gonna argue or refute any sorts of, you know, criticisms that are in line with that, because everything about that is true. Because I feel the same way, truthfully. But again, from a gameplay perspective, man, that game was really hard to put down, and I just had a really great time with it. And, you know, again, as a kid, you know, who loved Pokemon, and now as an adult who still loves Pokemon, and it being pretty much embedded into my DNA, you know, it was just such an incredible world to visit. I loved the Hisui region, and yeah, I mean, you know, the worlds or the environments could have been better. A lot of them were flat and just sort of uninspired, but it definitely had a vibe about it, and just seeing all of the Pokemon in the overworld, and you know, that clear, you know, historical, you know, Japanese influence that was put into the architecture of the game and everything like that. It was just phenomenal. And yeah, and I loved the concept of alphas, like alpha Pokemon as well. That was really cool, and a lot of the Hisuian variants were really cool also. So yeah, I
it's
mean,
good
overall,
when you're able
it was a great
to,
time.
like, you know, even when a game has flaws, when it still lands for you despite those flaws, and it still ends up like clicking with you, like
Yeah.
that's always a great sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, is the game I spent the most time on this year with, you know, about 160 hours. So yeah, it was great. So yeah, it's my number one.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Luiz, what are you giving your Refreshy award to this year?
Yeah, so as expected, just like Nicolas, it's Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I think it was a game that I had a lot of expectations. Some of my expectations were surpassed. Some of my expectations were not quite met. However, the overall package is just fantastic, and it's the kind of game that I will remember for years and years. That I will rewatch some of the more memorable scenes, that I will replay with a new game plus, that I will listen to the music as I'm listening. Nowadays I'm still listening to a lot of the music from the soundtrack. So yeah, it's just a kind of game that it's a mark on the Switch, and I think it's one of the best games on the Switch to me. I was even Nicolas was mentioning how the end was not quite good as we expected, and recently my girlfriend just finished the game, so I rewatched the ending with her, and it was funny because I cried rewatching with her, and I didn't cry when I finished for the first time. I was sad, but I didn't quite cry. So I think seeing it the second time, it feels a little better. I think it feels a little more. I kind of understood a little more what they're trying to do from an emotional point of view. So yeah, I think I'm appreciating the game more and more as the time passes, and I think that's the mark of a great game.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of going into it. There are definitely expectations of what might happen and how it might connect to previous games. And after playing it, those expectations are not really met, or not met in the ways that people would want. But when thinking about it, when you know what's going to happen, you kind of appreciate what, like you said, you can appreciate what they are doing for, you know, what they're trying to do. And even if I still think things like the main villain ended up being a little weak, I think the final plot beats and the general themes it explores are really good. And you end up looking back on it and be like, man, that was still really good.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with these big, long games, at least for me, it really is more about the journey than the destination, you know?
Oh,
like,
true.
Even if the ending can fall flat sometimes, which has happened to me in some of these big, long games before, I usually look back upon them fondly, because, like, at the end of the day, like, these are creative products, right? And, like, everyone has different ideas for how they want things to end, but if I had a great time along the way, that's what matters the most to me personally.
Yeah, just recently I see a lot of people criticizing the ending of Bayonetta 3. And I didn't play the game, but I'm just super curious to see why people are so it's so divisive to people.
I don't know
So
how
that's
Dennis
what I'm
feels,
looking
but
forward to.
I don't know how Dennis feels, but I definitely have thoughts.
I'm sure you do, Nicolas. We'll have to save them for another time. Well, I'll wrap things up for us real quick. I played a lot of great games this year, and this was hard. But if I had to pick one, my favorite game of the year, honestly, I got to give it to 13 Sentinels: Aegis Rim, which came out on the Switch back in the spring. And I guess in a way it feels like cheating because technically this is an older game that originally came out on the PS4. But because it launched on the Switch this year, I'm going to count it. This game was just an absolute thrill ride from start to finish. It is extremely story focused, but it is also a strategy game, a real-time strategy game. And I thought that both elements of it were pretty damn bordering on perfect for what this game was trying to be. The story is really just fascinating. It's almost completely non-linear. You can go through this entire mystery in basically any order by picking the 13 characters. And so everyone's playthrough is probably going to be slightly different. And I feel like, the fact that they were able to tell such a complex, time-bending, reality-shifting story centered around these high schoolers with all these weird story shenanigans and have it all not just make sense, but be extremely clever and like genuinely surprising, just absolutely blew me away. And the real-time strategy gameplay, which is the main thing you do outside of the more kind of point-and-click narrative sections, it's just a blast. I mean, it's I guess you could say it's maybe a little bit more about style than substance, but it can get very tricky at times, and you really do have to think on your feet and manage your pilots. And I just had an amazing time with it. And there really wasn't a single point during the, 40, 50 hours I spent with it that I was bored or not looking forward to what would happen next, which I think is just really high praise.
I have
Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. I have to play this one.
Yeah, I've so desperately wanted to get into this, and I've just been waiting for a good accessible sale. But I really, really want to play this.
I think it's on sale right now. It's
is it in the US?
40%. Oh, I'm not sure if it is in Europe too, but
Yeah, I've been waiting for a physical sale on it because I really want to own it physically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad it finally came to Switch, and I really hope that more people play it because it's definitely deserving of all the accolades that it's gotten over the years. Okay, well, that is our first annual Refreshies Awards. So thank you guys so much for tuning in for that. I just want to say to everyone, all four of us on the podcast, it has just really just been a great time just doing this show every week with y'all and talking about video games and nerding out for a little bit. So thank you guys for all you bring to the show and for making this such a good time.
Yeah, it's super fun to talk with you all guys, and it's just awesome to have I think we four are so different from each other, like even the country that we live in, so it's always fascinating to change some ideas with you all and to just share all my gaming experience. So I think it was an awesome year recording the podcast.
Yeah. Hope we can keep doing this for several months to come.
Yeah.
So it's always the highlight of my week every week, and hopefully it is for the listeners as well, So being able to, come here and talk with you guys, and then, not only that, but, get the input from the listeners as well. And, basically just having a conversation about this art form that we love so much, and, be able to also work within that art form is definitely something I don't take for granted, and it's amazing. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully this keeps going on for as long as it can, basically.
Yep, agreed, for sure. And thank you, as always, to all of our listeners. We wouldn't have a show without you guys. The biggest Christmas gift you could give to us is to spread the word about this show. Go out onto social media, share a link, tell your friends, something along those lines, because we really want to spread the word and increase our listeners next year so we can keep doing more giveaways and keep bringing new exciting things to the show. But we really want to say thank you to everyone who has tuned in to all of these episodes since we started back in March. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, we are going to be taking a 2-week break to celebrate the holidays with our friends and family. And we hope you guys all have the chance to do the same and play some great video games. But we will be back in early January. I think that about wraps things up. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be back at you soon with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.